Hello and welcome to the LLG Grapevine podcast. You're listening to Helen McGrath, LLG's Executive Director of Policy and Governance, and Dennis Hall, LLG Bulletin Editor.
Hello, everybody.
Now then, productivity plans are in the news. Can councils be compelled to submit them to government? And of course, last week we had the fallout from the by-elections in Wellingborough and Kingswood. However, there's been enough coverage of that in the sector news, so today Dennis and I will take you on a walkthrough of some of the highlights from last week's LLG Bulletin. And we start by considering the matter of redaction. Dennis.
Well, to be honest, Helen, I think I must be spending too many hours watching the post office and the COVID inquiries, with the advocates scrolling through hundreds and hundreds of legal documents with huge black line redactions of information and names. Well, some of this may be about to change, as the Court of Appeal have criticised this practice, at least in some circumstances. Here's more on this. The Court of Appeal has found the practice of government departments redacting the names of junior civil servants when disclosed is inimical to open government and does not fulfil the duty of candour. In the Secretaries of State for the Home Department and Levelling Up against IAB and others, Lord Justice Bean said he'd been struck by the robustness with which previous judges in the High Court and the Administrative Court rejected the government's arguments for what has been described as routine redaction. The dispute arose after several asylum seekers challenged the lawfulness of regulations removing the requirement for houses in multiple occupation to be licensed if asylum seekers are to be placed there. The government had sought to withhold the names of junior civil servants, but this led to an objection from the legal campaign group Justice, which intervened in the case. In the High Court, Mr. Justice Swift, at first instance, heard arguments from the Secretaries of State that suggested that junior civil servants might be at risk were their names to be disclosed. However, the High Court judge found insufficient reason to warrant the redaction of the names, and the same applied to the names of those who appeared to be employed by contractors working with the Home Office. He also dismissed outright the arguments from the government that invoked legal professional privilege and the Convention of Cabinet Collective Responsibility. And at the Court of Appeal, Lord Justice Bean described the appellant's submissions as extraordinarily far-reaching. He noted that the redaction of the names of everyone taking part in discussions at meetings or sending or receiving emails, even if excluding ministers and the top 2% of civil servants, would result in disclosed documents covered in black spaces. Such documents, he said, are far more difficult to understand than documents which give the names of those involved. He said he agreed with Mr. Justice Swift that it would usually be permissible to redact contact details if that is thought to be useful, and added that there might be cases in which names should be redacted, for example, if it concerns national security. But concluding, he accepted the respondent's submission that defendants in judicial review proceedings do not fulfill their duty of candour if, save for good and specific reasons, they disclose documents with redactions of the names of civil servants. Now, the government may well seek to overturn the Court of Appeal's decision to the Supreme Court. However, for now, the key takeaway remains this, that a litigant in judicial review proceedings is not entitled, as a matter of course, to redact, on the ground of relevance, the identities of officials in disclosure. Helen.
Well, let's see if the government does appeal, but until then, of course, the Court of Appeal judgment stands. Now, the government have issued a joint statement on updates to proposals to clear the backlog and embed timely audit. This, of course, comes out of the fact that the backlog in the publication of audited accounts of local bodies in England is large, with the number peaking in September at 918, but standing as of the end of last year at 771. still very large indeed. In July 2023, the Minister for Local Government published a cross-system statement to Parliament setting out proposals to tackle the backlog, and since then, organisations involved in the regulation and oversight of local body financial reporting and audit, now as systems partners, have been working collectively to agree a proposed solution to clear the outstanding historical audit opinions and ensure that delays do not return. This statement I referred to provides an update on the proposals and asserts that all system partners share the conviction that bold steps are necessary to reset the system and recognise, quote, the exceptional nature of the proposed measures. To clear the backlog of historical accounts and reset the system, the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities proposes putting a date in law, referred to as the backstop date, of the 30th of September 2024, by which point local bodies would publish audited accounts for all outstanding years up to and including 2022-23. The National Audit Office is proposing changes to the Code of Audit Practice to require local auditors to comply with backstop dates by giving their opinions in time for audited accounts to be published and to allow them to provide a single commentary on value for money arrangements for local bodies for all outstanding years up to and including 22-23. The duty for local bodies to publish a delay notice where the audit has not been concluded by the deadline will be withdrawn. This is because, with a backstop in place for both local bodies and auditors, authorities would be required to publish audited accounts by the 30th of September 2024. The introduction of a backstop date is intended to allow those who prepare and audit local body accounts to focus on more current financial periods. Listeners should take a look at the statement, which proposes 3 phases of reset, recovery, and reform. Now, of course, we often cover information emanating from the Information Commissioner's Office in the podcast, and today is no exception. Dennis.
Indeed, Helen. The ICO has developed an online modular self-assessment tool that enables public authorities to rate their performance and to assess where improvements need to be made. Here's the detail on this. So, what is the FOI Self-Assessment Toolkit? Well, the toolkit is designed to help public authorities assess their current FOI performance and provide indicators of where efforts should be focused in order to improve. It also provides templates for taking improvement actions. The toolkit currently has 3 topics and is intended to be developed to include further topics in the future. The first topic is timeliness, and this module considers the timeliness of responses to information requests. Second, there's a Section 12 module that covers exemption where cost of compliance exceeds the appropriate limit. The final topic covers Section 14(1) of the Freedom of Information Act, which deals with vexatious requests. So what are the benefits of using this modular toolkit? Well, good FOI practice benefits public authorities. As well as complying with the law, there are reputational and financial benefits from efficient and effective FOI practices. And the toolkit also provides an opportunity to develop a relationship with the public based on openness and transparency. So how does it work? Well, the first decision that you have to make is which topic you want to assess your performance against. And once you've decided that, you can then go on to decide what you do next in the series of topics that are available. But it's important to complete all of the topics to give you a full understanding of where all opportunities for improvement might lie. And with the number of adverse reports involving public authorities on the increase, this readily accessible online assessment tool is a must for authorities that are keen to rate their current performance and to assess where improvements are required within their organisation. Helen.
And of course, the ICO is currently consulting on a range of issues, with the first wave inviting comments on the lawful basis for web scraping to train generative AI models. I have to admit, web scraping was a new one on me. Now, as flagged in the LGA's update, the Levelling Up Housing and Communities Committee inquiry received oral evidence last week examining the role of government, local councils and developers in ensuring the delivery of suitable housing for disabled people, and indeed what the government can do to support disabled tenants in the private rented sector in England. Councillor Victor Chamberlain gave evidence as a representative of the LGA's Local Infrastructure and Net Zero Board, echoing the LGA's asks of a need to build a range of suitable housing options for disabled people, and particularly ones with accessibility features and home adaptations. The insufficiency of the Disabled Facilities Grant to meet demand for housing adaptations was also significantly highlighted. The LGA has called for the government to fully fund the grant and review the 30,000 cap on grant expenditure per home, which is now, it says, insufficient for most major building work costs. Written evidence to the inquiry was published on the 5th of February and it's publicly available now. It includes submissions by Disability Rights UK, Inclusion London, Housing Made for Everyone, Habintech, Property Mark and the Chartered Institute of Building. Incidentally, the committee is also looking at the National Planning Policy Framework and whether it ensures house building complies with the Equality Act 2010, together with examining the progress made since the publication of the findings back in July 2022 of the government's consultation entitled Raising Accessibility Standards for New Homes. The committee will, moving forward, look at how far the government can ensure it provides provision to support disabled residents who do not live in new build homes, and whether the Disabled Facilities Grant supports housing adaptations. The committee recently launched an online survey for its inquiry, looking at what the government can do to ensure disabled people have access to accessible and adaptable housing in England. The survey is designed to gather disabled people's views and experiences of finding or adapting suitable housing, and the closing date for responses is Thursday, the 15th of February. Now, in a change of item entirely, some concerning reports from LawCare on bullying at work, Dennis.
Yes, Helen, and we've reported on LawCare reports previously, but the latest one contains announcements that there's been a dramatic increase in the number of people seeking support because of bullying at work. So let's have a close look at their report. LawCare's 2023 report shows an increase in the number of people contacting LawCare for mental health support during 2023, and with a sharp increase in people getting in touch because of workplace bullying. There was a 14% increase in the number of people contacting LawCare for mental health support. And there's been a 95% increase in the number of people saying that workplace bullying, harassment or discrimination was their primary reason for seeking support from LawCare. Chief Executive Elizabeth Rimmer said, "I would urge individuals and organisations to start taking active steps to create working environments which better protect mental health and where bullying and harassment are not tolerated." And she went on, "We need to drive a collective responsibility in our sector to tackle bullying and harassment by identifying the workplace factors that can lead to it, such as low psychological safety and managers with little or no training and support, and taking positive action to address all of these." Rimmer recognises that there is a need to continue to challenge the stigma that prevents many still from speaking up about their mental health and seeking support. Each single act of storytelling, awareness raising, or advocacy contributes to transforming legal culture and for the better. Helen.
Collective responsibility is the key, Dennis, but it would be interesting to know how these statistics are broken down and whether that increase applies predominantly to the private sector or whether the public sector should be equally concerned. We can see, can't we, within interventions and public interest reports, that governance failings more readily come from poor culture, and therefore the risk of bullying within those elements must surely be higher. Now, finally, from me, the LGA have published a councillor's workbook on effective opposition in local government. The workbook's objectives, according to the LGA, are threefold: to highlight the important roles that opposition groups and councillors play in ensuring good governance and effective local government working, to identify approaches which will help opposition councillors and groups to increase their effectiveness, and to provide practical ideas, tips and guidance to opposition councillors and groups. The workbook has been developed from a previous workbook and 2 webinars, which was produced back in 2020 on the role of the opposition during the COVID pandemic and its reset and recovery period. Now, the 2020 workbook and webinars hold their relevance in particular for local government during periods of emergencies. Although opposition strategies must reflect local circumstances, it is possible, the LGA states, to distill key lessons for developing effective opposition working. And in stating this, they set out 10 components of effective operation as follows, and I'm going to read them all. Clarity on aims and policies, coherent opposition policy, to be a ruling group in waiting, engage outsiders and refresh ideas periodically, skilled use of opposition strategies and tactics, wise use of resources, understand implementation, a cohesive, effective team, effective group management, and a positive, upbeat approach. And I should source reference here Dr. Stephanie Snape from the New Leadership Foundation for identifying those 10 components. So the workbook also discusses skills for opposition councillors and groups, and again, a lack of skills contribute to governance failings. So the LGA have set out effective opposition skills, as including leadership, influencing and persuasion, intentional relationship building and networking, effective communication and working well with the media, understanding the policy-making process, analytical questioning skills, the ability to advocate, negotiate, build strong teams, and work well within them. And finally, use advanced political skills. Perhaps a skills matrix might go some way to self-identification of needs for training purposes. However, I'm sure you'll be aware this can court controversy and requires subjective assessment. Now, breaking news just before we go, the LLG Spring Conference 2024 will be taking place on Friday, the 7th of June at the Met Hotel in Leeds. So please do look out on the training pages for all the information in relation to that and book your place. And on that note, you can read more on the items discussed today and many more besides by going to bulletin number 6, available on the LLG website now. So it's goodbye from me.
And from me too.